At 41, Pippa Middleton is finally opening up about the truth behind her split from James Matthews, and it's not what anyone expected. For years, she was seen as the polished, graceful sister of the Princess of Wales. Her life looked perfect from the outside. The fancy events, the smiling photos, the fairy tale wedding. But behind all that glam, things were crumbling.
Has it changed your relationship?
It's hard sometimes because I have felt publicly bullied a little bit just by, when I read things.
Have you had a hard time with that?
It's been a bit difficult, yeah.
So what really pushed Pippa to walk away from a marriage that seemed rock solid? And why is she speaking out now, after all this time? Join us as we break down the real story behind Pippa's failing marriage, Pippa Middleton's marriage to James Matthews. When Pippa Middleton and James Matthews finally went public in 2016, the media went crazy. After years of being chased by cameras and called the world's most eligible woman, Pippa seemed to have found someone steady, wealthy, and ready to share life outside the royal bubble. The press jumped on the story, and within a year, the two were married in a lavish ceremony. Everything from her lace Giles Deacon gown to the floral arch that framed their vows was sheer luxury. But while the wedding made front pages around the globe, their relationship was quietly complicated from the start. James Matthews wasn't a stranger to success. A former race car driver turned hedge fund manager, he was reserved and preferred an extremely private life. His money came from hard work and smart investments, not fame. He preferred quiet dinners over red carpets and rarely gave interviews or appeared at public events unless he had to. Pippa, on the other hand, had lived in the public eye ever since her sister married into royalty. She wasn't chasing fame, but she understood how to live in it. She'd been photographed at high society events, rubbed shoulders with fashion elites, and learned how to work the attention to her advantage. According to sources close to the couple, they were like two very different people trying to build a life in the same house. Where James leaned into routine and silence, Pippa brought energy, style, and sparkle. She was still known for that unforgettable white Alexander McQueen dress from Kate's 2011 royal wedding. Even years later, designers continued to credit her for putting sleek, minimalist bridal party dresses back on the map. That single moment had opened doors for her. She wrote a lifestyle book called Celebrate, ventured into event planning, and briefly tried branding opportunities. Though not all her projects were hits, they kept her in the media loop. That constant attention, though, came at a cost. Pippa was no stranger to the downside of fame. Shortly after the royal wedding, paparazzi snapped bikini photos of her on a yacht during a private family holiday. The pictures exploded across tabloids, sparking outrage and lawsuits. The Middletons fought back and won, but for Pippa, the damage was personal. It was one of the first times she truly felt how invasive fame could be. Pippa admitted that the experience haunted her for years, even as she smiled for cameras at charity galas and Fashion Week parties. By the time she married James, the glamour still sparkled on the outside, but people didn't know that cracks had already begun forming underneath. The couple lived in a multi-million-pound townhouse in West London, surrounded by luxury, but slowly, their paths started drifting apart. Remember that James didn't want cameras near their doorstep. He avoided social events where Pippa was expected to shine. Sources close to the couple that Pippa adjusted at first, pulling back from the press, saying less, and staying low. But it wasn't long before she was back doing what she loved. Attending events, giving style interviews, and getting snapped in street-style outfits that set trends. They started living separate social lives. But the worst is yet to come. Keep watching for more reveals. James stuck to private clubs, golf courses, and business meetings. Pippa stayed in the loop of high society, showing up at Wimbledon, attending royal events with her sister, and supporting health and fitness campaigns. Even though they were technically together, their appearances as a couple began to fade. There were fewer photos, fewer outings, and more questions about where they were and why they weren't seen together anymore. People close to the fashion world began noticing a subtle shift in Pippa. Her style changed. The bold dresses and bright colors slowly disappeared. Her clothes became more neutral, less expressive, almost muted. Some called it mature, others called it lonely. Whatever the reason, it was clear that something inside her was changing. Her once confident and visible presence seemed quieter, and her public appearances were reduced drastically. She never addressed the change publicly, but people could read between the lines. The woman who once stood confidently next to royalty was now walking solo into events, often avoiding red carpets altogether. And while nothing explosive ever came out about the marriage, no cheating scandals, no screaming fights, still, there was tension, and it was growing. At the heart of the issue was a lifestyle divide that couldn't be patched with compromise. Pippa was part of a world that demanded visibility. James had spent his whole life avoiding it. She needed freedom to be seen, to speak, to exist in spaces where cameras flashed and outfits mattered. He needed peace and space to breathe. The balance between their two worlds slowly tipped, and neither could fully meet the other in the middle. Even when they tried, the effort showed. Friends noticed them leading events separately. Vacation photos grew rare. And in interviews, when asked about married life, Pippa became vague. What many didn't know was that Pippa was struggling silently, not just with the marriage, but with the feeling of being stuck between two lives. The one she was born into, and the one she had stepped into through fame and family. That conflict never went away. It sat at the center of their home, quiet but heavy. By the time whispers of divorce started circulating, most people had already sensed something wasn't right. And just when the rumors began to spread, more cracks appeared in Pippa's public life. So how did Pippa handle the growing pressure in her marriage? That's exactly what we are about to reveal. Stay tuned as we take a cue from Pippa's approach to life and fame. Pippa's attempts to manage the pressure. Pippa Middleton has never had the luxury of just being ordinary. Long before her sister became a future queen, and long before her name started trending in global headlines, Pippa was already familiar with the pressure of trying to be perfect. As the middle child between two successful siblings, Kate above her and James below, Pippa always felt surrounded by comparisons. Kate was graceful, polished, and beautiful. James was smart, entrepreneurial, and laid back. Pippa had to carve out a lane for herself. From a young age, she learned what it meant to carry high expectations. The Middleton household wasn't just warm and supportive, it was ambitious. Her parents, successful in their own right, made sure their children were well-educated, well-dressed, and well-mannered. They pushed for academic excellence and social intelligence. Pippa picked up quickly. She didn't just want to keep up, she wanted to shine. At the University of Edinburgh, she studied English literature and built her reputation as more than just a smart student. She became a connector. She networked. She joined the right clubs. She made the right friends. After college, she stepped into jobs that made her visible in London's elite circles. She worked in luxury PR, high-end event planning, and eventually, brand partnerships. But her real breakthrough came not from work, but from public fascination. By 2008, Pippa had been named the UK's top society singleton. It wasn't just a gossip column title, it was a sign that people were watching her, even more than royals and celebrities. That is not all. Just 4 years later, she was included in Time's list of the 100 most influential people in the world. That nod didn't come from royal blood or marriage. It came from how strongly the public connected with her style, her presence, and her story. Still, no matter how far she climbed, there was always the shadow of cake. That royal link never went away. Every headline about Pippa came with a mention of her sister. Every achievement was held up against Buckingham Palace walls. Even when she landed major press on her own or launched a project independently, the credit often felt split. Success never felt fully hers. It always seemed borrowed. That need to be seen for her strengths seeped into her marriage too. Behind closed doors, she wanted James Matthews to share the spotlight with her. She wanted to replicate, in some way, the public fascination that Kate and William enjoyed. She wanted James to warm up to public life, show up at more events, and be part of her public image. But James wasn't interested in any of that. He didn't grow up preparing for press conferences or parades. He came from a world of business meetings and quiet country weekends. The more Pippa leaned into her public image, the more he leaned out. That pressure wasn't just public. At home, she was raising 3 kids. She had a husband who didn't want fame, a family legacy tied to royalty, and her name to protect. The world expected her to be the perfect wife, the perfect sister, the perfect mother, and the perfect brand. But something had to give. And the part that gave was Pippa's sense of peace. She had poured so much into keeping everything polished and running that she hadn't left room for herself. Her silence spoke volumes. She never lashed out at the press or gave emotional interviews. But her retreat from the spotlight, her wardrobe changes, and her slower pace told the real story. She was tired, not just physically, but emotionally. Perfection had been the goal for so long, but now it was suffocating. This chapter of her life was about more than just marriage. It was about identity. Who was she without the Middleton name attached to royalty? Who was she without James beside her? Who was she if she stopped performing perfection and just lived? These weren't questions she could answer in public, but they were questions she was finally starting to ask. As the cracks in her picture-perfect life became too clear to hide, Pippa began making small but bold decisions behind the scenes. We're about to expose Pippa's interesting decisions and how she walked away from everything that once defined her. Stick around. This one's worth hearing. Thank you for staying with us. Share your opinions with us in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also, click the following video on your screen, and you will enjoy it.